99% of fantasy drafts are already completed, but that also doesn't mean that your team is already in its final form. Matter of fact, there's probably some guys that went undrafted in your fantasy football leagues that should actually be on your roster. So today, we're going to cover 9 different players that should be added before week 1 of the NFL season. And fellas, some of these names might not seem all that enticing, but honestly, some of these players I would much rather stash now because they do have potential upside as the season goes on. And Ollie Gordon, I think, is a perfect example of that. You have Jalen Wright dealing with an injury right now, Devon Achane coming into the season banged up, Cameron. I mean, to me, he is the definition of a high upside handcuff that you want on your fantasy rosters.
Yeah, we know Achane's smaller back. You got injury risk there. This is a team, especially me, I project them to bounce back. I project him to bounce back enough that if he's solidified the running back 2 role for himself, I think he could have close, maybe not, but close to standalone value, where if you're in a desperate spot, you could put him in the flex on a week. We've seen Achane and Mostert do it before. Achane last year had a ton of touches, still only had 203 carries, right? He's just not a guy they're going to give 250, 260 carries to. They need a second back to mix it in and out with.
And even last year, you saw this kind of like battle between Raheem Mostert and Jalen Wright in his rookie season, where when Raheem Mostert wasn't getting the job done, they tried to give the ball to Jalen Wright, and he just didn't look good. Now in the preseason tie, right, they both ended up looking bad. So I don't know. It's like, does Ollie Gordon in some cases kind of just feel like the lesser of 2 evils, even though he probably plays a thumper role much better than a Jalen Wright would?
A thumper on a Miami team that we haven't seen a thumper on a Miami team before, like at least with Mike McDaniel as the head coach. Like it has been the Raheem Mostert year, right, with all the touchdowns, and we got the Devon Achane year. What's to say that Ollie Gordon doesn't take kind of those, downhill snaps when they get closer to the goal line over Achane, which would stink. But at the same time, for the value that you get on Ollie Gordon right now, who goes undrafted and is kind of on consensus, on average, rostered in less than 50% of leagues. Like you said, Luke, is like, this is a pickup that you can only benefit from. You don't lose anything. There's no downside by rostering Ollie Gordon.
Cover a few more guys similar to Ollie Gordon as we go throughout this show. But if you want more fantasy football content this year, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well. Fellas, I also realized I had presented our subscribers with the challenge of helping us hit 5K before the start of the season. I didn't realize that like within that time span, we're actually already halfway there. So you all have been pouring out the support. It was a super high bar to set, but really our hope in creating fantasy football content for you all is, yes, to provide you some extra insights that we're using to beat each other in fantasy football, but we want to remind you of the fun and camaraderie that comes with playing fake football. If you missed our reaction to your hot takes yesterday, I think that was like the pinnacle of that. As you got further and further onto the episode, we just became more and more impatient with one another. That's because we love having fun and debating with one another. So if you enjoy that kind of content, stick around. We'd love to have you join us for our journey here. Let's talk about another rookie running back now here, fellas. Dylan Sampson of the Cleveland Browns, going within the same range of Ollie Gordon in fantasy drafts. But the caveat here for Dylan Sampson is that you do have a Quinshon Judkins coming back. The backfield isn't entirely Dylan Sampson's yet. Even though Judkins is back in the Browns facility, it seems like he's going to sign a contract here before week 1 starts. Maybe by the time you listen to this, Quinshon Judkins has already signed his rookie contract. But Cameron, there's still a little bit of runway here for Dylan Sampson to kind of play a 1A at least to start the season. And if anything does happen to Judkins, a suspension kicks in halfway through the year, all of a sudden you've got probably the Browns running back 1 on your team.
I gotta be honest, I was really close to putting him as a start of the week in our starts episode. I didn't want to get that hot.
Not a spoiler for tomorrow or tomorrow by the time you listen to this.
I did not put him into it. I just wasn't that confident. But they're playing the Bengals, so they're gonna have to move the ball. And Jerome Ford showed he's not a great in the passing game, or that's not his forte. If Judkins does sign by the time you're listening to this on Wednesday, it's really not enough time to get acclimated to this offense if you haven't been around the team yet. So it's going to be really Sampson and Ford. So at least for 1 week, you're getting a guy who's going to have a decent role within this offense, at least in the passing game. And if he looks explosive, he's going to take over this backfield pretty quickly because we know who Jerome Ford is as a runner.
Ty, where are you kind of at on the Dylan Sampson? I don't want to call it experiment, but the Dylan Sampson situation when you're balancing Judkins, you're balancing a vet like Jerome Ford, but also kind of the lackluster Cleveland Browns offense as a whole. Like, Sampson to me is someone worth rostering because I do think he's a good enough football player that we could potentially see like RB2, RB3 numbers out of this year if he does get the backfield to himself. But where do you kind of stand on Dylan Sampson entering into the season?
He's kind of teetering someplace between being a second half of the year kind of stash and a standalone guy who's going to get a lot of work right out of the gate just because of the situation that he finds himself in. I think a lot of people, while you do need to, consider that Quinshon Judkins being in the building, signing a contract does affect the upside of Sampson and even Jerome Ford, if we want to go that far. But I think Sampson is worth rostering in case, hey, let's say Quinshon Judkins just is not like ready to play, is not up to game speed, is not ready for NFL action just yet, that he needs some ramp up time here. Like Dylan Sampson has shown that he is going to be at least the lead guy between him and Jerome Ford. So that's where I say like the quicker that Quinshon Judkins gets up to speed, that's where I'm saying that Sampson is kind of the second half of the year kind of roster stash. But at the same time, the longer that Quinshon Judkins takes, the more immediate production we're going to see from Dylan Sampson.
The next guy on this list is definitely not a second half of the season stash. Matter of fact, I actually kind of don't blame people for not having Adam Thielen rostered in more leagues. He's only rostered in 40.5% of leagues. The threshold for this video, by the way, we didn't name this up top, but below 50% of leagues, it's a requirement to make this video. I'm kind of with the people here. I honestly don't know how interested I am in rostering Adam Thielen to start the season, mostly because, sure, you're without Jordan Addison, but you're only without Jordan Addison for 3 games. I don't see Adam Thielen playing ahead of Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. If we expect this offense to be a little bit more balanced this year, less targets to be funneled Adam Thielen's way, he's just kind of one of those guys where I'm like, I feel like he's just kind of rotting on your bench for 3 weeks because I don't know if he gives you more than like 8 fantasy points and you really don't feel confident enough to start him while Jordan Addison is out. I don't know where you stand on that, Cameron, but for me, I'm kind of like, I'm not all that interested in Adam Thielen. I'd rather take other guys that we're going to talk about later on this list.
I think he's a guy that if I'm worried about my flex position right away, and I'm just going, I really don't know what I got with either players, I'm taking Thielen because he's just going to fit in that mix. Because you'll know pretty quick.
On that quick. I feel like if you're in that situation, and no offense, you drafted a really bad fantasy football team.
Well, and you might have, and that's why you're thinking like we just have to name the reality. You could be there, right? And you watch some other fantasy football podcast throughout the summer, and you didn't tune in until now, so we're fixing your team. So that could be the situation you're in. Just because you're gonna know game one if McCarthy's gonna favor Thielen. Because if he favors Thielen as the more of the slot guy, more of the get open, I mean, obviously he's going to favor Jefferson, but as the second option compared to him and Hawkinson, you'll know that week one what it's going to be. And maybe you have a viable option for 2 weeks to get you till, hey, I can find somebody else that comes into the fold. That's really what Thielen is. Maybe you got someone who's a dummy in your league that you can flip and trade for. You know, it depends what league you have, but I agree. It's not sexy. It's more of I just need something because my team is not great or I'm in a 14-man league.
Ty, you want to balance the scales here at all, or are you going to pick one side or the other?
I feel like Thielen is going to go through a change of outlook after the first 3 games once we get Addison back. I agree with Cam in the sense that if you need just a plug and play guy, not necessarily saying that he's got top 30 kind of upside, but if you need a guy that is going to get on the field, Thielen is going to be one of those guys. When he comes back, the question that you're going to have to ask yourself, and we probably will have a good feeling as for an answer to this question: how good are the Vikings going to be on the ground? Because if they're not going to be as great or as good as we think that they can be with an improved offensive line and improved backfield, there's maybe some red zone opportunities here for Thielen in this Vikings offense because they'll just need to throw more often then. So like I said, I think we're going to go through a bit of an outlook question and change once everyone is back in the fold here in Minnesota. So until then, you just need to look at Thielen as really just kind of like a 3-week rental and just say, you know what, if I need a guy and I'm in a pinch, maybe it's Thielen that I need to look at.
I'm just not interested in those guys to start the year. I would like, to me, Adam Thielen isn't a pivotal enough piece for me to roster on my team or a big enough difference maker where I feel like I gotta have him on my roster. If I'm in a pinch for the first 3 weeks and I'm banking on Adam Thielen, again, I go back to that statement that I said during Cameron's bit. It was just like, I'm sorry, you drafted a terrible fantasy football team. If you're like, ooh, I'm in a pinch, yeah, I need Adam Thielen for 3 weeks. Like look, we can try and fix your mistakes, but man, I just don't see a world where I'm in a pinch to rely on Adam Thielen, who's just getting acclimated to the Viking. I mean, granted, he was here when Kevin O'Connell first was a part of this team, but I'm sorry, I'm not interested. I just don't see the point of rostering a 3-week rental from week 1.
We probably need to move on, but I just want to say Thielen feels like the most niche ad of the list. That like if you're in a 16-man and 18-man league,
sure,
and you need some guy, and if it's again a super deep league, you just need a guy. Thielen's probably your guy. But if you're in a 10-man or in a 12-man, I sure hope you've got you've got
unless
2
you
or 3
auto
other
drafted
guys.
Rashee Rice and Brandon Ayuk.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, if you're on
And
auto
Jalen
drafted
Coker
and Joe Mixon and yeah, right. I mean, if you drafted all the injured dudes because you weren't there for your fantasy draft, then I suppose there might be a world in which you actually might need to bank on Adam Thielen. Cedric Tillman is a guy I would much rather have on my teams over Adam Thielen, if I'm being perfectly honest. Mostly because I think Cedric Tillman is going to be, I don't want to call him a mainstay of the Cleveland Browns offense because that's way too generous in talking about Cedric Tillman, but I think he's going to be a more reliable piece of the Browns offense long term than Adam Thielen will be in Minnesota. And Ty, I'll kick it and I'll start with you here because Cedric Tillman's a guy you've I don't want to say you've been sneaky rising on, but again, where he's going in drafts right now, if you're in a deeper league, you kind of look at the board and you're like, yeah, there's actually a case here to be made for Cedric Tillman over a lot of these guys.
I love the story that you're telling that I'm slowly coming up on Cedric Tillman, even though Cedric Tillman is one of my highest drafted receivers on Underdog this year.
Well, you said you weren't coming up on him. You said, I look at this range of players and I just click Cedric Tillman. You never said that you actually liked him. I've said all offseason long, I thought Cedric Tillman was a sleeper.
I just draft a guy because I just think he's the most meh out of everybody. That's
why I draft most guys after the 10th round.
So the thing with Cedric Tillman, again, is you're hoping that Cleveland is going to be playing from behind in the majority, if not all of their games, that they need to continue to throw the ball, and that there's enough volume between Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, and David Njoku that Cedric Tillman may just kind of luck his way, if I want to say it, if you could say it like that, into being a top 40 play, which we saw a couple times now, granted with Jameis Winston, but at least you've got a better quarterback, a better thrower of the ball in Joe Flacco under center. So there's some hope that I even brought up too when we talked about Jerry Jeudy in our hot takes video, which again, you should go check out because that was a
wonderful show.
Cedric Tillman may pose enough of a threat to kind of not make Jerry Jeudy as reliable as we saw him when he was without Cedric Tillman. So I'm fine with Cedric Tillman as a stash, because if the what if happens, you may have found yourself like a top 45 receiver.
I mean, you look week 7 through 11 last year when Cedric Tillman was on the field, fully healthy with a Jameis Winston. He was the wide receiver 9, while drawing the 8th most targets during that stretch. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're getting top 10 Cedric Tillman, by no means. But Ty, I think you named it. Joe Flacco under center. He's not afraid to throw the ball around the yard a bit. He doesn't have the rookie heebie-jeebies or anything as he's sitting back there in the pocket trying to figure out and read an NFL defense. But Cameron, you have any interest in rostering Cedric Tillman? To me, I feel like he should be on at least 50% of rosters.
He feels the same to me as Adam Thielen does. I'm going to be honest. From the aspect of, I don't think Joe Flacco plays more than 5 games. And once Joe Flacco's done, you are done with Cedric Tillman because he's maybe better than Jerry Jeudy, right? Like that. I don't think he is. I think he's the third option. Maybe he's the second. They're all fighting because you got Njoku as well, who I think is up there too. So that's the issue I have, is you are just kind of a ticking time bomb until Joe Flacco's gone. I will agree there's more upside with Cedric Tillman, right? Because you don't have Jefferson, you don't have Hawkinson. He could be the best pass catcher on this team with Joe Flacco. It could work out all right. I just look at it as you got a couple of weeks until they're like, hey, we're 1-4, 2-5. Let's get to one of the rookies.
I mean, that is the perfect counterpoint to all of this is, Joe Flacco, have fun with him for 4 or 5 games this year before they say, okay, that's enough. We really should see what we have in Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders as well. Another player I'd rather stash over Adam Thielen, Luther Burden III. I get it's not going to be fun right away. He's not going to hit the ground running like Adam Thielen will, but I'll tell you what, by the time Adam Thielen, after the first 3 weeks of the season, has kind of maybe hit his peak for the year, Luther Burden, I think, is just going to be starting to hit his stride. When Ben Johnson uses the Chicago Bears second round pick to make sure he gets Luther Burden in this offense, this is absolutely a guy, Cameron, that I'm willing to take a shot on.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing. Ty talked about with Ollie Gordon. He's the same way. You have such good upside with Luther Burden here that maybe he emerges. He's the clear number 3 option. They're using him all over the field. He gets 4 or 5 design touches a game. He's scoring a touchdown every other game. You're extremely happy with that. The opposite side is he has, like Keon Coleman last year. He's a rookie who just doesn't produce, that you're just like, he couldn't find his way in the offense. I mean, obviously, unlike Keon Coleman, he's got a lot better pass catchers in front of him. And so that's the downside, but it's like, okay, he's the last spot on your roster. It doesn't work out after week 6. You just drop and move on. So I think there's a lot of upside here with, who cares about the downside kind of a play. Yeah.
And again, you're not stashing Luther Burden to be a weekly contributor.
Yes.
When these guys are sitting at the end of your bench, like I was listening to Hayden Winks and Jacob Sanderson talk about Luther Burden, right? And they're like, I really don't care if I get the wide receiver 47 every single week out of a guy like Adam Thielen. We hate to keep ragging on Adam Thielen. I'll try and use somebody else. Cedric Tillman. Let's say Cedric Tillman. I don't care if I get the wide receiver 47 every week out of Cedric Tillman, because 9 times out of 10, he's not hitting my lineup.
Yeah.
If I can sit and be patient with the Luther Burden at the end of my bench, whoever I would take ahead of him, I wouldn't be playing anyways. Could Luther Burden Ty come into season just totally be outproducing all these other guys and give you top 36 production?
He could. I think there's just a ways to go until we see that.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to be instant.
Yeah, I think like in a perfect world, you capitalize on production from Adam Thielen, Cedric Tillman right off at the beginning of the season.
I think that's a bad strategy because no. Because by the time you want to try and pick up Luther Burden off the waiver wire, he's going to be the number 1 waiver wire ad, and you're going to have to burn all your fab on him. Why not just roster him now if you know that's coming? So if you're not playing Adam Thielen anyways?
What's the context if Luther Burden is the number 1 waiver ad? What is the context?
It means he put up a week and people have said, boom, he's a mainstay in the Chicago Bears offense. Let's say he put up 12 fantasy points 1 week. And they're like, boom, yes, he's a mainstay in the offense. Number 1 waiver wire out of the week.
You think that happens when a team has a DJ Moore and a Roma Dunze and even a Colston Loveland to go with?
Who says it can be anybody's week in that Chicago Bears offense?
I will say, I see both sides, because I agree with you, Ty, that I don't think it's likely, but I agree with you, Lucas, that it takes 3 plays and all of a sudden, over 70 snaps.
Remanufactured Deebo Samuel touches for Luther.
So I see both sides, and if you're not taking him now, it's a risk. I think it's a calculated risk that I think pays off if it's by like week 3 or 4, but you might get to a week and just be like, well, I screwed up. I can't get him anymore. I think that you have to keep that in mind if you are taking Ty's play.
So the question then that I pose, if that's then again, you should be adding Luther Burden again, because we get the 3 manufactured touches. Why wasn't that the reason why you drafted him in the first place? Why is he falling undrafted then?
Because people don't want people. I think it's a shift of mindset within the people of they're saying, well, yeah, the downside with Luther Burden is, yes, he is the 4th option in the Chicago Bears offense, and I could take a 0 for 8 weeks out of the season. What I'm saying is, as soon as he puts up a 13, 14-point game in week 4, he's the number 1 waiver wire out of the week, and it's already too late.
People get desperate pretty quick. That's the issue, is they go,
Yes.
oh my gosh, I'm 0-4, even though they have 5 better wide receivers, and they go, but he put up 12 points, because we all chase points on waiver wires.
Yes.
That's just, the nature.
So many people live with that philosophy. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Which it's my philosophy. It might not be everybody's, but mine is I would just rather take the guy who I think could explode later on in the season than sitting on the wide receiver 47, than sitting on Christian Kirk might get some regular early value at the start of the season, but like pick another guy where it's like he could be like a regular wide receiver 40 play. I'm just like, you're never going to crack my lineup. I'll just sit on Luther Burden so I don't have to fight for him later on the waiver wire. That's my only philosophy. And Ty, if you want to like play the Adam Thielen game and then drop him later for Luther Burden because you think he still might be there, like you can roll the dice on that if you want to. That's not my preference with these waiver wire ads. Fellas, let's take a quick break. We've cruised through 5 players. There's still time to draft these guys over on Underdog. We are 1 day away from the regular season. The contests have not 100% closed yet. So if you want to get more reps in against real people for real prizes, do it on Underdog. We'll take a break here from them. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up, because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Alrighty, fellas, let's keep it chugging. We got 4 more waiver wire ads that people should consider for the regular season, and why don't we throw in some honorable mentions and some like IR stashes at the very end, because I'm sure people are wondering about them as well. The next player I want to talk about, Xavier Legette, rostered in 31.6% of leagues. I'll maybe just start with a question. I won't even intro any of my thoughts on Xavier Legette. I want to see where you two both are at temperature-wise on Xavier Legette. What are you doing with him now that you're for sure without Jalen Coker for the first 4 weeks of the season, and the next man up behind him is either Jatavian Sanders or Hunter Renfrow, who was originally cut from the Panthers roster this offseason. Cam, where do you kind of stand on Xavier Legette? Where do you think he kind of plays into your fantasy lineups early in the season?
I really want to be on Xavier Legette. Like, I think Legette Spaghetti could be the guy, but I want him to be the guy. I just don't think he will be. That's my issue. He's got the opportunity if he can capitalize, if things come together. He's got a runway built for him to be opposite of Tet, but I just don't know if it comes together. That's my big concern. I think he might be worth taking the shot on, just because of, hey, what could be first round draft capital. They're going to keep giving him the chance. It's just, are you actually buying into he's got the ability, the skill to really get it done?
Ty, maybe I'll let you answer that question then, because I do think if there's a positive you can take of Xavier Legette going into this season with Tedero McMillan joining the team, is that you're going to see Legette back in the Z role for this offense, the flanker role, where he was much more effective last season before they kicked him out to X to put Jalen Coker in the flanker role and kept Adam Thielen in the slot. It was setting up to be the perfect scenario where you got Tedero McMillan playing the X for this offense, where he was going to be playing regardless. You get Xavier Legette back in the Z role, and Jalen Coker, who ran 2.62 yards per route from the slot last year. That was 6th best in the league, right? So it was working out perfectly, but now that you don't have Coker there, it's more opportunity for Legette in a role that we saw him have some success in last year. But what say you?
I think it's worth a shot if you've got the spot. My concern lies putting it's not a Jalen Coker problem. It's just that this team doesn't run a whole lot of 2 wide receiver sets. They were 5th most in 3 wide receivers usage last year. So with that in mind, I'm just worried that, again, with more players, more guys that can catch passes on the field, Legette isn't exactly going to get the opportunities that we want him to get, even though he's in a more natural position here in the offense. So I'm fine taking the shot on him, but I would just say, like, understand what at least explain to yourself what the expectations are for Legette. The expectations are that he can get maybe 4 for 50 on a random week, maybe finds the end zone. That should be your expectation. If you're expecting a guy that can be a top 40 guy because he's now in the most natural position for him, I think you've got too high of expectations.
And as friend of the show, Jagger May would say, he's got to keep his hands to himself as well, and stay on the football field, not get thrown out in preseason games, buddy. Like, come on, man. Anyways, Xavier Legette's a fascinating one. Would you two rather have Xavier Legette? Would you rather be adding Xavier Legette, or would you rather be adding Kyle Williams? Both kind of in the same spot, playing behind a different wide receiver one in their offense. 2 different offenses at the same time. Which one would you rather have, Cameron?
I'm going to take Kyle Williams just because I trust Drake May more than I trust Bryce Young. That's what it comes down to me. I think at the end of the day, they're probably going to end up being pretty similar. But if I'm picking one quarterback to kind of take that step forward and bring the wide receivers with him, I think it's going to be Kyle Williams. The issue, I think, is Kyle Williams' role is a little more clouded just because they have so many guys who are kind of in this, almost feels like Green Bay-esque in New England right now, of he should emerge, but we don't actually know if he's going to. Whereas Carolina, it's pretty defined where Legette's going to be. In this case, I'm okay taking what is the mystery box of Kyle Williams of what could be, because I kind of know where Legette's going to land.
I mean, Kyle Williams to me is the epitome of the Family Guy meme, right? Where it's Peter and he's looking at the mystery box. It's like, oh, but it's a mystery box. It's not a boat, but it could be a boat in a mystery box, right? It's like, Kyle, it could be a boat, but what's in the mystery box, Ty?
It's Kyle Williams, and I'm honest, that's the way that I would lean.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man, I got you.
Kyle Williams.
Yeah. I personally lean Kyle Williams as well, because this is where I get into my player takes. I'm just a bigger believer in Kyle Williams than I am in Xavier Legette, even with the natural role. Like, I think Kyle Williams does have what I'll call he doesn't have the safety net that Xavier Legette does, just because, like Cam said, it is just kind of what feels like Stephon Diggs and then 4 or 5 other receivers that are just going to be kind of rotating throughout the year. But I believe that Kyle Williams can kind of step up and stand out and kind of be the guy behind Stephon Diggs versus Legette, who will be behind Ted McMillan. And then when Jalen Coker comes back, there's a chance then that Legette is probably the number 3 guy, just because Coker out of the slot is a formula that Carolina will look to kind of exploit.
Absolutely. And I think I'll frame it like this. Maybe Xavier Legette is probably the more like surefire, for like a lack of a better term, waiver ad. And Kyle Williams is definitely the more explosive, high potential waiver ad, which is probably why he's rostered in less leagues. People might be taking a little bit more safety with still some upside with Xavier Legette. I think there's still plenty of upside there as a first round pick, but I'm with you both. I would rather be rostering Kyle Williams right now, just because I'm such a believer in the profile. I do think he's going to be the standout wide receiver 2 in this offense. And I'm not going to go as far as saying he's going to be on par with Stephon Diggs. I think that would be not a bold prediction, maybe not a hot take, but I don't know, man. I want to see how much juice Stephon Diggs still has left, even after his injury last year, and how Kyle Williams can complement him and or like go tick for tack with him as well this season. We've talked a lot about wide receivers here, though, fellas. Actually, the last 4 players we've talked about have been wide receivers. Let's close it out with another 2 running backs. Woddy Marks, hands down, needs to be on more fantasy rosters. I cannot say this enough. Nick Chubb, yes, we all know he's probably going to be the starter in week 1. People are convinced Dameon Pierce, I know they've already said Dameon Pierce is going to come out and be the 2 here, but brother, I don't think this coaching staff is thrilled to have Dameon Pierce run out there alongside Nick Chubb. Mm-hmm. Woddy Marks' profile coming out was much more of a pass catching back. That screams a complimentary role to Nick Chubb. And if this team is going to have to be throwing the football, Cameron, with how bad their offensive line is, who says Woddy Marks can't catch 2-3 dump off passes per game, rack up 25, 30 yards on the ground, give you a few rushing yards as well? Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Woddy Marks is a top 30 running back or anything, but running back 56 right now, like, I'm not going to be surprised if he gives you like a few flex weeks every once in a while.
Yeah,
as long as Joe Mixon is out. Let me also add that on there.
100%, and that's the big question mark. We have no idea what's going on with Mixon. He feels like he should be rostered the same amount that Dylan Sampson is. That's kind of where he feels like at this point, because you have a better offense. So even if it's a more reduced role than what Sampson ends up getting, you're probably scoring more. You're in more opportunities. Joe Mixon had over 50 targets last year. Nick Chubb, Dameon Pierce, they are not receiving backs. They are just anti-receiving backs, if anything. So you're not throwing them the ball. You have no idea what's going on with Joe Mixon. It could be just a fantastic role of, I say fantastic, but it's probably like maybe he's a top 36 running back kind of fantastic role. But for where you're getting him and the fact that he's pretty much in every league, I agree. At this point, he should be rostered because by week 2, he could easily be the running back 2 on this team. Yeah,
Ty, you want to chime in here at all, either disagreeing or adding a little bit of extra context here around Woddy Marks? I mean, again, I'm with Cameron. He should be at least 50% of leagues. I think he should be in far more leagues as well, because he's just going to be one of those guys right away where people, if he does catch 3-4 passes that first week, racks up enough yardage, shoot, if he even catches a touchdown in the red zone off of a dump off, instantly people are going to be all over this guy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, the reason why Woddy Marks is probably the least drafted and least rostered running back between him, Chubb, and Dameon Pierce is just because name value of Nick Chubb and Dameon Pierce, or they think it will just be the rotation of Nick Chubb and Dameon Pierce. And I think what we have kind of been alluding to is that this backfield will not just be on the shoulders of Nick Chubb and Dameon Pierce, that Woddy Marks will have a role. And maybe it's not immediate in week 1, but at some point when we have a clear timeline for Joe Mixon, I think this will be a Woddy Marks plus Nick Chubb / Dameon Pierce backfield. It's going to be those two rotating, and Woddy Marks is then going to be rotating on the field in the passing situations, but he is not going to be as affected by the Dameon Pierce rotation, the possible Dameon Pierce rotation, I should say, because again, I'm also of the thought, I'm like, Dameon Pierce was kind of an afterthought last year, and now all of a sudden the coaching staff is supposed to like him again now. Like Woddy Marks is going to be the most, like, he won't be as affected by Dameon Pierce as Nick Chubb will be.
And a guy that the Texans prioritized in the 4th round of the NFL draft, traded up with the Miami Dolphins to go up and get Woddy Marks. And I understand only a 4th round pick. That's not saying a whole lot, but it was earlier than I thought Woddy Marks would go in the NFL draft. I thought he'd be closer to a 5th, 6th round pick, a mid day 3 pick, if you will. But no, this team went out and prioritized Woddy Marks. Now he gets an opportunity to actually play a role on this Houston Texans team. Let's talk about one more player that I definitely think should be rostered more, fellas. Then we'll get into some of the stashes, or like they're just over 50%, but you should probably consider adding them if you're in a shallower league. Chris Rodriguez Jr. I know everybody's hot and bothered by Bill Krosky Merritt, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, if you prefer the full government name rather than what he prefers to be called. But to me, this is just an easy dart throw to say, hey, what if it's not Bill? And it's probably not an aging Austin Eckler. What if it's the guy who has been tenured the same amount as Austin Eckler, got a chance to play a little bit of a role last year? Like, what if it is Chris Rodriguez that plays a nice little role and actually potentially looks better than a Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt once the regular season starts to unfold? This is just an easy dart throw. That's just like, it's one of the three. You might as well. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it could be one of the four. They could play Jeremy McNichols.
Well, you could get McNichols out there, yeah.
The issue is, or the good thing is for Chris Rodriguez is they have like no draft capital, no money really sunk into any of these running backs.
No.
So they're going to go hot hand. So if he comes out and looks the best right away and he holds on to it, you have the starting running back for the Washington Commanders. The downside is it's Chris Rodriguez, right? So it's you need a little bit of a long shot here that he's able to do that. But yeah, we talk about all the time, attacking ambiguity. That's what you're doing right here. Of hey, he could be the guy. He could take over. Why is he not on a roster?
Ty, Chris Rodriguez, you interested in a dart throw here? I understand it's not super sexy. It's very much contingent. But are you willing to take a dart throw here? Not a dart throw. A dart throw on Chris Rodriguez.
In deeper leagues, maybe. I just see that this Washington backfield just is going to be constantly rotating. 1 week it could be Chris Rodriguez, and the very next it could be Bill, and then after that it's Austin Eckler and Jeremy McNichols. So I don't know if playing roulette with Chris Rodriguez is really worth it, because I just don't think that there is going to be a guy in this Washington backfield that's going to step up and really kind of be the 1A or lead back here. I think it's just going to be a revolving door.
Well, fellas, to close out the show here, let's talk about two different groups of players. Let's talk about some players you should be stashing on your IR, but first, some players who, if you're in a shallower league, these players are rostered over 50%, but they're rostered under 60%. So they're kind of still in that threshold where maybe you should still be considering them. And Cameron, I know you have such strong conviction on Keenan Allen, at least early on in the season, where maybe I'll give you the floor just to say a few words about him as someone who people should be considering.
You don't have to like it, but he is the wide receiver 2 for Los Angeles Chargers. He will get those targets. He still gets open. I don't know what else I need to say about that. He had 130 last year on the Bears. He was on pace for 190 this season before with Justin Herbert. I understand he's old. I understand it's gross. But he will be the number 1 waiver wire ad after week 1.
Oh,
he is on your waivers. That is my prediction. I think you need him on your team right now.
Interesting. I mean, they do play against Kansas City Chiefs, so that could be a game that is high scoring. Could be a lot of fireworks through the air in that game as well. Ty, one of your debatably, potentially your most drafted player this offseason was Braylon Allen. I'm honestly surprised he's not rostered in more than 60% of leagues. Frankly, I think he should be.
Yeah, he definitely should be, just on the chance that Braylon Allen is the 1B here, that this is more split than people think it is with Breece Hall in this backfield. And Braylon Allen, not only being the goal line kind of early down guy, there is potential that Braylon Allen kind of takes more and more work. I'm expecting a not so even split at the beginning of the year, but then there's possibilities that we get to midway point, second half of the year, where it does begin to get more and more even. And heck, maybe on the chance Breece Hall is moved at a trade deadline or something like that in like the actual NFL, not just in your fantasy leagues, but like actual NFL. Braylon Allen is then the guy in that backfield.
Yeah, I'll wrap out here with a gross one. I know Najee Harris has had a really brutal offseason, both like literally and like from an NFL perspective. Why? I mean, it's been a rough offseason for the man, but I'll maybe paint a picture for you that isn't so pretty of a Amari Hampton, where who's to say playing human bumper cars just doesn't work out for him? Like, what happens if Amari Hampton does pick up a long-term injury relatively early on in the season? Najee Harris is apparently ramping up to play in week 1. It's unclear how much he will or what that actually looks like. But if anything does happen to Amari and Hampton, like, it's Najee Harris next man up. So it's not a fun stash. It's not a high upside stash. It's 100% contingent on Amari and Hampton picking up some sort of injury. But on an offense like the Los Angeles Chargers, there's just pieces of that I'm okay accumulating. It's not super fun. I really don't blame you if you drop Najee Harris like 3 weeks into the season, but let's not act like playing human bumper cars doesn't put you at a much higher risk of injury compared to some other positions in the NFL. Last thing we'll talk about here, fellas, some quick IR stashes, players who are going into the season banged up. Cam, we brought up Jalen Coker already. Yeah, a guy who easily rostered in only 10.4% of leagues. I'm sorry. As soon as Adam Thielen was traded, he should have been rostered in well over 50% of leagues, in my opinion. Absolutely, a guy should be stashing on your IR.
Yeah, as long as you have an IR. I know some redrafts, they're
Sure.
still not with the times, don't have an IR spot. But if you do, yes, you should be picking him up, putting him there. It is a free spot as of right now. Obviously, if you had a big injury or something like that, you can move him out of it because you're still hoping that he's the wide receiver 2 on Carolina, right? It's not like it's crazy lucrative, but it's a good enough role. And like you said earlier, he was 6th in yards per route run from the slot. So we know he has upside in the positions that definitely should be on a roster because he is one that week 2 is going to come around and maybe there's not as many waiver wire ads or week 3, and then everyone's picking him up and you just don't have a chance. This is right now after the news broke, you can pretty much get him for free.
Yeah, the other obvious one here, Ty, is definitely Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans. Landed on IR to start the season, going to be out for at least 4 weeks. As soon as he's ready to come off of IR, though, he might not be the number 1 waiver wire ad, but he'll definitely be top 3 on that given week.
Yep, and it's because his skill set works in this Tennessee offense. You've got the upgraded quarterback, not necessarily thinking that this offense is instantly, or I really should say this team is going to be, one of the better teams in the league. So you're playing from behind. You need some more weapons on the field in terms of the receiving game. Tyjae Spears fills that role to a T.
Well, fellas, let's put a stamp on it there. 9 waiver wire ads and a handful more that you should be making before week 1 of the NFL season. Look, football starts tomorrow. All right. We got starts and sits video coming for the first one of the year. I literally, we're going to sit down and record it immediately after this one. I'm super excited for it. So if you want more start sit advice, you want more waiver advice, whatever it may be, this is the place you're going to want to be. Hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well. Enjoy the ride with us this season. Again, along with providing you insights, we want to remind you of the fun and camaraderie that comes with playing fake football with people that you thoroughly enjoy. If you want to follow our other socials, FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you're a YouTube person through and through, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts. The salmon colored shorts are becoming a tradition here, fellas. Another episode where I am wearing, they're comfy. All right. It's like the awkward, 65, 70 degree range in Minnesota where it's it feels good to have a little bit warmer pair of shorts on. So anyways, the bit's already old. You two aren't even laughing at it anymore. Nobody has said anything in the comments though. Maybe more importantly, if you've been over on our TikTok, you watch our Reels content, you watch our YouTube Shorts content, you might have noticed a little bit of a facelift over there. Pretty excited about that. So worth checking out if you haven't already. You can follow our personal socials as well. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw, FFF for Cameron, Tyler_Platt for Ty. We'll be back tomorrow. Starts and sits for week 1. You ready for football? We're ready for football. We'll see y'all then. Deuces.
Deuces.